Hey everyone, Hans here, hope you're doing well. Today I'm gonna share gold with you guys. I definitely stand by that. I think that what I'm gonna share here, if you humor it, even for a while in your life, and you genuinely apply it in life, you might just be preemptively, you might have just preemptively protected yourself from almost all manipulation that happens through speech, through language, maybe. I know that there are coaches that would probably try to shadow ban me even more than I am already and run off with this, with what I have to share here, and earn big bucks, because quite frankly I'm certain that I could earn big bucks with this. They might say, well, why don't you do it then, Hans? I should, but instead I'm gonna do it differently. This is one of my final parting gifts, in a sense, that I will do for free, if you will. I have been thinking about it for a while, and I want to invest more of my lifetime in my people. I find that there is nearly not enough done in the white positive sphere, and specifically in the, for lack of another term that immediately comes to mind, the heathen sphere within the white positive sphere, to do right by our own. There's simply not enough of it. I know that there are people who are doing as much, and I cannot applaud them enough. I just want to invest more of my time into it, and that means that I will require financial support for that. You all know what I'm about by now, how can you not? And you can always go to people who know me personally. Some of them are also creating content, and I guess they'll let you know if you ask them. That is basically the reputation that I've built, and that people think I deserve, is out there for grabs, so to say, to not to find out who Hans is. You know me from a distance, most of you. Some know me from interacting with me behind the curtain, so to say, on a day-to-day basis, as much or as little as they want. I think I've done my part in showing that I'm genuine, and I think I, by extent, can finally ask for financial support once the time is right and once I can open that door. It's still not for tomorrow, it is in the coming, and I have to also be harsh, in the sense that I can wait out a while. I have worked hard over the last years. I absolutely have. I won't demand excruciating sums like some coaches do out there. I will only ask that I can get by. If I can feed my near family, if I can have a roof over my head, if I once in a while can get a new tank top, then that is basically all I ask for. Any excess will always be invested towards the people that I care so much about. And I won't let anyone say that I'm disingenuous when I say that. Because some people also seem to forget, apparently, that I've stuck my face out there, being the target for any anti-white that wants to. Right? I have people that have my back. Like on a physical level, a lot of preparations, let's say, have been made. If they come for me with physical violence, if they come for me with in whichever other way they think they can, I have answers ready. And woe to the anti-whites that I find to try to harm my family. My people is worse enough already. Having that said, and it's a bit of a serious start, I suppose, All else is then for the community in general, and I know I'm shadow banned, so I know it's gonna be a build-up time. I'm not expecting to have everything I need straight off the bat or have everything go right, to go smoothly. If the community wants to invest in me, then I will invest back. And the rule is really simple in that sense. If I stop investing, then you stop investing in me. If you stop investing in me, I am forced to stop investing in you. I'm not only saying this for myself, I hope that we can work towards, and I know many good men are onto this already, in many walks of life, who are working on this, and we all can do that for each other eventually. I am one of those who's going to be silly enough, I suppose, to stick his neck out as one of the first among, well, let's just say there are many who have done so already, and all credit to them for being earlier than me. Now I'm going to take that financial risk, and I do risk losing a lot. Don't mistake that, but I do not need to go into detail of that. It's not about, you know, poor hands. No, I make this choice. I stand by it. I hope that people will acknowledge the work that I've done so far, that which I have given, that I have just given, and by the time that I will ask for something in return, that the community will do that for me as well. And then we can hopefully evolve towards yet more and more and more people that we know who are doing the right thing, who are daring to make that step to come in after me. It's not just about Hans, it's about all of us. Always has been. And I think you know that with me. Because what else is the point of all the videos that I've made? You don't do this as a gag. You do this only when it's serious, and when you really put every waking day thinking about all of these topics, trying to bring them capably. And I'm not even that charismatic necessarily, I think. And try to improve people's lives by helping them get the insights they need to make those improvements. That's what I do. And I can do so much more. In fact, there are going to be some works that will be presented as well. More on that another time. Alright, going through that little explanation, I suppose. I'm gonna go into the topic proper of the video, which is, it revolves around language. It revolves around speech. This could be a life changer for everyone that wants to heed what I have to say here. It definitely helps me in protecting myself from being cheated and from being naive. Naivety being a very big problem, in a sense, among whites across the world. We are a very naive bunch. We think that everyone is as good as we are, that is as well intentioned as we are. It's not true. It absolutely is not true. We don't like hearing that, but there is no sense in denying reality, because that road lies madness and a lot of hurt. So, how on earth can speech, just words, have any effect on people? Well, you hear them every day, don't you? You listen to them every day. Makes you do stuff, whether you like to hear it or not. It's not necessarily an evil, it's just yet another tool that we have to communicate with each other. But there is a power to speech. It can put images in our minds. It can conjure ideas in our heads that we have. And clever speakers, oh boy, clever speakers, they know how to use words to advantage themselves at the cost of others. Not always. And I think I'm just gonna get into it immediately now. You have two modes of language. You have genuine speech, which is basically using the words in their true intent with the direct purpose attached to that intent of the words used. Something like, what would be a good example? If someone says to you, pass me the milk, it can be, that's as straight as it gets, right? Or please pass me the milk. What does that do to you? What magic is at play there? These just words just put the image of milk in your mind. And not only that, the attachment to, oh, I can pass it over. Or I guess you cannot, you know? That seems simple, but it only seems simple because that's how we get introduced to it. It's sort of like a person who has electricity in his or her house or his or her entire life and does not realize that there is a certain magic attached to having that power running through your home. But you have it everywhere, you're so used to it that it's not really acknowledged as something special. Yet wait what happens when the electricity falls out. Where is the magic gone? And it's similar with speech. On the other side, and some clever people will stop Hans now and say, the other side is lying, isn't it? Lying, just straight up, mistaken or something, being mistaken, or saying something purposefully saying something untrue. It is attached to it, but not quite. What I'm talking about is basically jargon. And jargon can have many purposes, like genuine speech has, but it is usually jargon has like multiple layers to it. Genuine speech definitely needs to have the purpose of communicating something over. That's the whole point of speaking in the first place. The jargon, the user of jargon, however, could even tell you the exact same thing as the one with the genuine speech, but it will have a subliminal message, a double message, could be a half truth, a half lie, whatever you want to call that. And I've had to write it down a little. Jargon can be misleading and tantalizing. It can be even ritualistic. It can be coded, and maybe in terms of the coding, perhaps even the ritualistic aspect of it, is, for example, abbreviations can be code. A good example, I think, is, for example, one of the euphemisms, I suppose, of the North American state. That is the USA. Let's just go with US for now. What do you hear if you take the letters away? US. Well, it can go to 2 points. You can hear use, or you can hear us. And that could technically be jargon. It probably is, because it's in service to a nation. Jargon is not always evil. It's not always with anti-life intentions or anti-white intentions, but it stays a double layer that most people completely miss. And personally, I think that is still wrong. I don't care if it's for benign purposes, but that is my stance on that. Now I'm using a very obvious one, maybe, that most people, even in the world, will know. But what about all those abbreviations that you come through on a weekly basis, if not daily? Are you being told things that you're not necessarily consciously catching, but subconsciously. And does that make you respond in certain ways that you otherwise wouldn't have responded as? That's the entire purpose of jargon. You have terms, it can get really sinister, of course, and maybe I'll get into that in a while. Or can I think of something straight away? Oh, you want to hear some truly sinister jargon? It was a clothing line of a company for children, and the line said something along the something else. Keep it nice and tight. You know, in straight, genuine speech, keeping it nice and tight is like keep your room clean. You know, keep your house tidy. You know, wash yourself, that sort of stuff. You know, don't let everything just fall apart, basically. Right? Can we agree with that? But in this company, it's went hand in hand with little white girls specifically, putting on, you know, clothing that makes me scratch my head. Like, I remember when children still dressed like children. It's like they were wearing short skirts. Why does an 11-year-old girl need to have a short shirt? Or not a shirt necessarily, like those. I want to say dress, but it's not a dress. It's basically very revealing clothing. Let's just go with that. Damn, Hans. you country guy. Now you tell me if that isn't sinister. What is the clo? I wish I remember the company. So yeah, you could say that Hans is lying here, I suppose. It's up to you. But I definitely remember that from my own experience. You don't need to believe me if you don't want to, but it is in any case a nice example either way, right? The exact same words used, but then with the genuine speech it is a positive, and then when it comes to attaching children in skimpy clothing, yeah, make up your own mind as always, I suppose. So there is that as well. A very beautiful example, I suppose, of a sinister jargon. Now, in the white positive sphere, particularly in, for lack of another term, the heathen sphere, I suppose the whites who want to respect their ancestry, the deities that they come from, the land that they have interacted with for many generations. There are many organizations rising in it, and the intentions and all of that, I'll leave it in the middle. I'll leave it up to you to decide. But what I once came across was the word frith. And frith is a Norse term of a language that isn't used. So in a certain sense, nobody is playing around with that language today. That is to say, those words are practically untouched in this day and age. Their meanings are what we have, and they might be a little bit interpreted. But since barely anyone uses them, well, they're obviously just left to their true intent, to their true meaning. Why wouldn't they be? Nobody is getting any advantage of messing with them. I hope. I don't see what would be. Or maybe that's a naive stance. But what if you have frith, which means, I hope the wind isn't catching on too hard. If you have frith, it means it's an acknowledgement, really, of someone being good to family, good to friends, basically good to the community in general, and maybe even outside of the community. Sounds pretty swell. Sounds like something we want everyone around us and ourselves to be, right? Ideally. Okay, bearing that in mind, if that is such an important and good thing to be, imagine then that a certain organization has a few agents reading through some books and they come across this word. Well, they test it out on some of their own, maybe, who knows. They see how it is received, and if it sounds nice, it sounds a little bit like freedom, you know, freedom. Yeah. In other languages, I know some Germanic languages where frith comes very close to peacefulness, just kindness, good, just generally what we accept as upstanding virtue, right? This organization then goes around, sends out its most belligerent and loudest agents into the white positive sphere, and they'll start demanding frith. Now, I do not know how you can demand it, but it is, shall one call it, it's not something you can argue against, and that's the whole point. Because if you, for example, would have one of these agents say something like, "Oh, you need to have frith," or whatever, you know, be frithful, do frith to your next, to your near family, blah blah blah. Okay, it sounds all very good, right? Can't argue against it. Because we want, you know, we want people to be virtuous. But you need to understand, and that given that it is an organization, you can, well, this is the, here is the power for you that I can give you. If you understand that there is such a thing as jargon, which I have just shared with you, what it more or less is, what it can do, you can even confront a guy with. You can say technically, okay, loudmouth, frith, are we speaking about the Norse term where you acknowledge someone to be good to family, friends, maybe just people in general, or are you using it as the jargon of the organization you're part of? I have tried that, and I had to say the results made me laugh no end. There are no answers that I have to that, because they've been found out. Every jargon will always sound tantalizing. That's its entire purpose. That's to lower your defenses. And hold on just a moment. And yeah, it is misleading, because here's the thing. Someone who demands you to be a good person, is that, you know, what right do they actually have? I suppose they have the right to be belligerent loudmouths. That's all fine, I suppose. But what business do they have telling you? What, just because they don some robes, have a certain uniform on to, again, psychologically impress you, lower your defenses? It's like, ooh, this looks like an interesting or a respectable or a rich or what, like anything that could appeal to people, you know? Anything. Like, this looks like someone who has it screwed on right, and he says all of these fancy ancient terms. You must know what he's on about. No, not really, because they're not even using it in its genuine way. And there are thousands who use jargon for their politics, for their religion, for their specific organization, for their company, for their you will find it everywhere. If you can and train yourself to bear in mind, am I hearing genuine speech here, or am I hearing jargon? Your defenses will go up or down, depending on, you know, being able to acknowledge one or the other from the person that's speaking to you. If someone is using genuine speech, they're usually being honest with you. That is technically how it should be. And if you can acknowledge that in someone, well, now you don't need to have your defenses high if you don't want to. You can be like, oh, finally, an honest person, something like that. But if they speak jargon, if you're like, oh wait, hold on, you want me to be a good person, but you say that on behalf of, you know, you're part of this and that organization. Do they gain something out of that if I acknowledge your jargon? It's not about the genuine term, because they're using jargon. Does that make sense to you? Do you see now perhaps also why Hans should be charging people for this? Coaches ask thousands for this, some do. Others hundreds, some thousands. They'll say it in a bit more of a fancy way, I guess. with all of these cameras and their nice studio. Hans doesn't have that, you know. And I do not think that people would appreciate that if I suddenly have. Maybe, you know. Not what I'm after. But do you see how powerful that is? To being able to recognize someone to speak to you genuinely or through jargon. I usually also big giveaways, if you do not know them personally and they don't know you personally, the chance that it's going to be jargon when they're part of this or that is a huge giveaway already. What else can I tell you? I'm actually already running out of time because the machine is giving out. I got a few more minutes, so I'll go through the white positive sphere in general. And some might see that, okay, so if you want to surf white well-being, it comes with, well, the lexicon, right? And some might say then, oh well, lexicon, it technically is jargon too. Jargon can be straight as well, but it has to be undemanding. White well-being is technically jargon. It paints an image in your mind of, well, a world where white people are also acknowledged and no longer hated. Where white erasure is reversed. And then, once that is completely reversed, the white positive, white well-being is about doing well by everyone, also whites, right? That is technically jargon, but who is honestly hurt by this? Anti-whites might consider, well, anti-whites even are not hurt by this, because we're going to do them a big favor. We're going to remove them from our presence. Then they won't have to deal with these nasty whites that they so hate anymore. They won't have to deal with all of the technology that whites came up with. They don't have to look at white children. They don't have to come up with all kinds of companies who spill all sorts of jargon, like anti-racist, which is just jargon for anti-white. You see, they use it too, obviously. The difference, for example, with the one that I elaborated on, the Friv example, demanding Friv, white well-being is never demanded. It has to be voluntary. And that is true freedom, by the way. That is Friv, giving others the freedom and not browbeating them with abusive language, or not really abusive language, because that cannot be, with terms that emotionally abuse or emotionally club you over the head, whatever you want to call that. White well-being does not do that. Anti-racism does, because it implies that whites are, well, constantly an anti-white slur, which is racist, and that in and of itself is also jargon, because it's only one people only who can be supposedly that, right? So and if people back then had only known to call the inventor, I think it was Trotsky, this communist who got ice picked, I believe. So I guess that anti-white didn't escape justice necessarily, I suppose, maybe. Or maybe, because it was actually one of his own who did it, right? Very typical in those circles among anti-whites. They also hate one another, can't trust each other. If only people back then, when whites first were confronted with the term racism, they had said, okay, so are you using the term in some genuine way? I mean, what is the genuine term here? Or are you using it on behalf of your organization? If whites had said that back then, we would not even see half of the mess we have today. That is the power of speech. Well, you do with it what you want, you take it into your life or not. Hans is just giving you something for free that he should have charged people for. I said my piece in the beginning of the video is that there's gonna come a point where I may well hope that people are going to respect that I just did this. And when I ask for something back, that the community will be good enough to do so. And then in turn, promise, as I've done for the last 2 years now, I will be there for my people. I always will. But I need my people to look after me too. That's all I ask. I do not need any big houses or whatever. You know, I'm happy with the greenery I sit within, and that is all I have. That's all I want to maintain for myself. And anything else is just doing right until, you know, we all live in a white positive world. And with that said, you all have a good one, and bye bye. Till the next one.